Life, when you really think about it, is kind of like the ultimate game. And like any game, it has a set of rules. Today, we're cracking open the rule book. We're talking about ecology, the science that explains how every living thing, from a single organism to a massive population, plays the game of survival.
But first, let's kick things off with a real head-scratcher. Picture an animal in the middle of a blazing hot desert. Now, what if I told you it survives its entire life without ever taking a single drink of water? I know, it sounds completely impossible, right? Well, hang on, because we're going to find out exactly how this little creature pulls off one of nature's greatest magic tricks.
So, here's our game plan for today. First, we'll lay out the basic rules of survival. Then, we'll look at the big physical challenges that life is up against. After that, we'll dive into the 4 main strategies organisms use to deal with those challenges, how they evolve some truly mind-blowing special abilities, and finally, why sometimes the key to winning is all about strength in numbers.
All right, first things first. To understand the game, you've got to understand the playing field and who the players are. And that all begins with this one big idea: ecology. So what even is ecology? At its core, it's really the study of connections. It's all about how living things, from tiny bacteria to giant trees, interact with each other. And just as importantly, how they interact with their physical world. The sun, the water, the dirt beneath their feet. It's all one giant, interconnected web.
And we can look at this web on different scales. You can zoom way in and look at a single player. That's the organism. Or you can zoom out a bit to see a whole group of the same kind of player. That's a population. Zoom out again, and you see all the different populations interacting. That's a community. And if you zoom all the way out, you see the entire environment they all live in with its unique climate. That's the biome. Now, no matter who the player is, they're all facing a pretty tough set of physical challenges. These are what we call abiotic factors, basically all the non-living stuff that sets the rules and defines the playing field.
And you can boil most of them down to these big 4: temperature, water, light, and soil. Seriously, just about every survival challenge a living thing faces comes back to one of these 4 factors. They dictate everything.
But if you had to pick just one, the absolute heavyweight champion of environmental factors, it's temperature. Why? Because it controls the speed of all the chemical reactions inside an organism's body. It is, quite literally, the thermostat for life itself.
And the range of temperatures that life has conquered is just staggering. We're talking from the freezing poles to volcanic vents at the bottom of the ocean that are hotter than boiling water. And on a simpler level, temperature is the reason you can't just go and plant a tropical mango tree in the middle of Canada. It just sets the absolute boundaries of where life can happen.
Okay, so what happens when the environment gets stressful? When it gets too hot, too cold, or too dry? Well, organisms can't just give up. They have to cope. And it turns out they have 4 main strategies in their playbook.
Your first choice is this: are you a regulator or a conformer? Regulators, like us, are the high-energy folks. We burn a ton of calories to keep our inside world steady, like our 98.6-degree body temperature, no matter what's going on outside. Conformers, on the other hand, just go with the flow. They let their internal temperature match the outside world. It saves a ton of energy, but the trade-off is they're stuck living in very stable places.
Now, if regulating or conforming isn't going to cut it, you've got 2 other options. You can escape in space, or you can escape in time. Migrating is escaping in space. When things get tough, you just leave. Think of birds flying south for the winter. The other option is to suspend, which is escaping in time. You basically hit pause on life. A bear hibernating, or a seed waiting for rain, they're not leaving. They're just waiting it out until things get better.
But this is where it gets really amazing. Because over millions of years, organisms don't just cope with problems. They evolve incredible, permanent solutions. We call these adaptations.
So, remember our little desert mystery, the animal that never drinks? Well, meet the kangaroo rat. This thing is a master of survival. Here's how it works. It gets a little water from the seeds it eats, but the real magic is that its body can literally create water from scratch by breaking down fat. And to make sure it doesn't waste a single drop, its kidneys produce this super concentrated urine. It is a perfectly designed, self-sufficient desert machine. And plants have their own box of tricks. Take the Opuntia cactus. It's got this thick, waxy skin to lock moisture in. Its leaves have evolved into sharp spines, which means less surface area for water to evaporate from.
And it even does its photosynthesis in its flat green stem instead of leaves. Just genius.
And you know, our own bodies can pull off some pretty amazing short-term tricks too. This isn't evolution. It's something called acclimatization. If you go from sea level to a high mountain, you get altitude sickness because there's less oxygen. But your body responds. It starts producing more red blood cells, it makes your hemoglobin better at dropping off oxygen where it's needed, and you start breathing faster. It's your body adjusting on the fly.
Sometimes these adaptations follow these really elegant, simple patterns. A great example is something called Allen's rule. It basically says that mammals living in cold climates, like an Arctic fox, tend to evolve shorter ears and limbs. Compare that to a desert fox with those giant ears. It's all about surface area. Shorter limbs and ears mean less skin exposed to the freezing air, which means you lose less precious body heat. It's just simple, brilliant physics.
Okay, so we've been focused on the individual player, but survival is rarely a solo mission. So now we're going to zoom out from the individual and start looking at the entire team, the population. And one of the most powerful ways to understand a population story is to look at its age structure. You can actually predict a population's future just by the shape of its age pyramid. If it's got a wide base, like a triangle, that means lots of young ones. That population is expanding. If it looks more like a column, it's stable. But if it's top-heavy, with more old individuals than young, you're looking at a population that's likely declining.
We can also get a feel for how fast a population is growing by looking at its birth rate. But it's not just a total number of new births that matters. What ecologists really care about is the birth rate per individual. So if you have 20 lotus plants and they produce 8 new ones in a year, the birth rate is 0.4 per lotus. That simple number lets us compare the growth in a tiny pond to a giant lake.
And really, when you get right down to it, the size of any population is just simple math. It's a balance of 4 things. 2 things make the population go up: births and individuals moving in, that's immigration. And 2 things make it go down: deaths and individuals moving out, emigration. That's it. Additions and subtractions.
So, we've seen that every single organism is genetically programmed with the same 2 goals: survive and reproduce. They're all playing the same game. Which brings up one last really big question. What happens when their strategies, their desperate need to win, puts them in direct conflict with each other? Well, that is a whole other level of the game.